Thank you very much. I certainly wouldn't call myself a master. Yeah, possibly a social value geek. It is, again, just a pleasure to be here with my colleagues on the panel and to be in this virtual room with Social Value Thailand. And of course, we'll look forward to doing this face-to-face as soon as possible. So yeah, I would like to sort of start by setting the scene of talking around the ideas internationally and how these ideas are going mainstream. Professor Mark, of course, will know this is the title of our Social Value Matters conference last year when we spoke about the ideas going mainstream. And I think, you know, the idea that Social Value Thailand has only been in operation for 3 years is amazing because so much is happening so quickly. And that's reflected also on the international stage as well. So I think it's important to talk about why we want to do this. And it is about resetting, rethinking, building back better, doing everything I think we would all accept that we need to do, whether that's to achieve the sustainable development goals, whether that's to improve the performance of our own organization, be it a social enterprise, an NGO, an impact investor, or anything else. But it's not just us in this space, which is really exciting. And over the last few years, the sort of rate of interest and the people coming to the table or being more transparent, more explicit about their interest and involvement has really escalated. And that's what makes me extremely positive and hopeful about the future, that we can, you know, change the way the world accounts for value, because the reason we want to change the way the world accounts for value is to reset things, as Sakaltip rightly says. And this is the very mission of Social Value International. I hope you know about Social Value International as part of the conference. We have now networks around 25 different regions in the world. We have members in over 45 different countries. And what unites us is a mission to change the way the world accounts for value. And what that means in reality is making better decisions that take account of more than just the financial value, the financial impacts, so that we can reduce inequality that exists between people, between countries, that we can look to reduce the environmental harm and degradation that our activities and decisions create, and also improve the well-being of people. So if we want to do things differently, then we need to account for value differently. We need to take into account the effects of our decisions on people and the planet. And I know that my colleagues will go into more specific detail perhaps than I am. But again, the sort of really reassuring part at the moment is this mainstreaming, and we are not alone. We are, you know, all around the world, but there are some other entities and organizations that are really spearheading this conversation as well. And one of those is the Impact Management Project. IMP is focused very much on those investors for impact, or those that want perhaps more responsible investment. And it's a collection of over 2,000 organizations from around the world who, as it says in front of you, want to create global consensus. Again, just as we do, creating those standards on how to do this in a way that is good enough to do things differently, to make a difference. Social Value International is a part of the Impact Management Project. We are one of the standard setters in a network that includes others such as the Global Reporting Initiative, UNDP, OECD, and a range of other organizations. What's really positive is that we are all pulling in the same direction. So I think one of the big challenges, so we've got lots of really interesting and important trends, but I think we should also deal with some of the challenges that the movement faces. And one of those big challenges is that there is still a perception that there are many different ways of doing impact management. If we were being honest, there are not lots of different ways of effectively doing impact management if the agenda is to maximize your impacts and really do things differently, as my friend Kumbo rightly says. So to do things differently, we'll talk about some key principles and some key dimensions shortly. But what is crucial is to say that It is not a choice between one and another framework. They are largely complementary, but we need to keep that laser-like focus on why we're doing it in the first place. And why we're doing it is to change the way the world accounts for value, to reduce inequalities, to improve well-being, and reduce environmental harm as well. And another area that is growing rapidly, and Professor Mark, I'm sure, will be able to comment on this further, is the growing interest and recognition from academia. And of course, my friend Dr. Santi on the stage with us is another key example of just this. Harvard University are also one of the leading lights in this movement, again, a member of Impact Management Project, and Harvard were also presenting at the Social Value Matters conference this week. So Harvard, again, want to create consensus. They want to drive standards on how we can capture external impacts, not just for investors, but also for managers, for that decision-making piece. So again, all pulling in a very similar direction. So we have impact investors, we have leading academic institutions, we have Social Value International, which represents individuals and organizations from across the whole impact spectrum. And another piece of the puzzle is large corporations. So the Value Balancing Alliance is a collection of organizations, some of those you can see in front of you, very large organizations, that really do recognize the importance of valuation. And just like SROI, it's valuation in a monetary sense. So organizations are using environmental P&L, profit and loss account, to really identify where they can reduce cost, reduce risk, but importantly, where they can also spot opportunities for innovation and product growth. So a lot of entities, a lot of organizations from all corners of the world really pulling in that same or very, very similar direction. And again, I've said it before, but that is really what is exciting at the moment. But we're still left with that question of, okay, these ideas are good in principle, but what about in practice? And we're still forever faced with that question. I'm sure all of us on the panel deal with it quite regularly of, well, where do you start? What do you do? And aren't there lots of different ways of doing it? And again, Social Value International, as part of Impact Management Project, is really spearheading this consensus driving. And what IMP have done is to condense what lots of different frameworks are saying and identify that we're all talking about largely the same things. We're talking about those dimensions in front of you: the what, the who, the how much, the contribution, and risk. And this is crucial because it means we focus on effects, those outcomes for people, and how important those changes are. These are the impact questions that SROI is built upon. It understands those changes and the value from perspective of stakeholders. We then undertake the quantitative assessment that allows us to understand how much change is happening, for how many people, and for how long. And crucially, understanding our contribution. One of the big questions that we still have to address is changes are happening for people. Great. Some are positive, some others are negative. How much of that is down to our activities, down to our intervention, down to our investment? What is our contribution? So that question is dealt with explicitly. And perhaps what the IMP have done more explicitly than SVI has previously is to really talk about risk. And I see risk as a real positive. It's about managing risk. It's about managing the risk that we don't create as much impact as is expected, but also as is necessary to change people's lives, to address the system, the needs that people have. It's about making sure the evidence we have is good enough to support those requirements. So that's very much the sort of operational piece, but it's crucial that we think about how to get this data, how to get this evidence. And that's where the social value principles come in. So again, one of my big messages today is, yes, lots of people talking about these ideas and pulling in the right direction, but we are doing so in a complementary way. The impact management project's dimensions are supported explicitly by the principles of social value. They put stakeholders at the center of data collection and how we manage the results. The stakeholder tell us what has changed, how important those changes are. It allows us to focus on those changes that are most significant, that matter to people, that therefore affect our decision making, and we will do so transparently. And I think, again, one of the big challenges for the future, and I think this is probably true for Thailand and many, if not most, other countries. In fact, I would say it's a key challenge for all who are engaged in impact measurement and management, is that final principle, verification. If we're producing impact reports, SROI reports, for external stakeholders, commissioners, public policy makers, funders and investors, then it is explicitly demanded that we need to have those results verified and to do so externally. So just like financial accounts, your SROI report, your social accounts need to be independently assured and audited, because that gives the audience the confidence to make use of the data, to do things differently, to build back better, to reduce inequality, to reduce environmental harm, and improve people's well-being. So lots of positive stuff happening, lots of organizations pulling in the same direction. Impact measurement is not as challenging perhaps as people think. The crucial piece of the puzzle is making sure we do something with those results, and we go from impact measurement to impact management. So lots of positive things happening right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Adams, for give a big picture as a very important and the essence of social value. And I would say that I believe that right now we are going in a real, I would say, in the mainstream.